Thank you. So, welcome, guests from the Society for Theatre Research. I'm here in Bath today with Jorik Mol, who's going to be talking to us about theatre training and neurodivergency. Just to introduce how I got to know Jorik, we met at LAMDA, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, previously where Jorik delivered a talk to a number of the drama tutors there. Jorik himself goes under the tagline, professionally autistic. He also has a website, jorikmol.com. Jorik works as a disability and LGBTQIA activist and organizer, for which he does talks, he also does events, and he's a mentor for autistic students at a number of UK universities. In addition to his busy schedule in activism, he's writing books.
Oh,
he's
God.
currently writing... I've been rumbled.
Oh, God, that.
Yeah. 2 non-fiction books. One is called Feeling Fast and Slow, and the other one is Teeming, as in teeming with life and exuberance.
That's the novel, yeah.
Yeah. So, welcome, Jorik.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess one of the questions that has been plaguing a lot of the drama schools is how we become more inclusive. And particularly for a lot of tutors, the term autism is very confusing because you hear this term autistic spectrum. And from your perspective as someone involved as an autistic activist, if somebody asked you the question, what is autism, how would you answer that?
God, this is for $5.
Well,
It is the most fundamental thing about my life, because it's like autism is the way my brain functions, how I interact with the world, why I find the world fascinating and beautiful and really exhausting on a bad day. Being autistic, like on a biological level, I don't find all that interesting. I don't find that a very interesting question per se. What I find way more interesting is looking at how it functions sociologically and how we as autistic people, in our wide variety of experiences, engage with the world and how the world engages with us. And I think from that perspective, it is a lot more interesting than looking at autism and neurodiversity from a kind of pathological perspective. We are sick and need to be cured to be, to go back to the norm, whatever that norm may be. And whatever that norm may be, it's not us.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that has been, up till fairly recently, the medical model of disability has really looked at identifying people rather than symptoms, whereas what you're proposing sounds like a more social model.
Yeah, totally. No, it's completely based on the social model. When I worked as an expert by experience in the NHS, I kind of fell backwards into autism activism, and I was at an event in Oxford where Tony Atwood, who's a psychiatrist, was speaking, and I asked a question there. I was there partly as professional development, because I'm a teacher by trade, but also partly because I was doing research for my novel that has been going on since 2016, 2017. So it is very much both sides thing. And I asked a question, and this woman from the NHS just and so I was headhunted by her, and I was just like, okay, see what happens with this. What happened with it is that we created an autistic experience group, and we ran throughout 2019, and it was kind of a victim of its own success, because so many people finally felt, oh God, this is a place that we can, be honest about who we are. And one thing that I had fundamentally there for that group was that it would be autistic people in a place without neurotypicals there. And neurotypicals, I will use that term more again. Yeah. It's kind of like, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, well, why are you separating things? Why are you separating things out? And I get that. It's a very laudable intention to include everyone. But the world already doesn't. And so it's for us, in order to be safe, I have found repeatedly that not being around non-autistic people who are not neurodivergent, which is like autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, that is safer.
Interesting.
We don't have to pretend to be anything that we're not.
Mm.
And that form of masking is very common with the autistic community. Like pretty much every autistic person has a conversation about masking, about how they present to the world in order to remain safe.
Right. Okay. Very, very interesting. I'm just going to pause for a moment before we go on to the next question. Hello. Hi, welcome Society for Theatre Research guests. I'm here up in Bath with Jorik Mol. Jorik is, amongst other things, a teacher, but also a disability and LGBTQIA+ activist. He also runs his own website called jorikmol.com, listed as professionally autistic.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's how I'm known across the internet.
Across the... Indeed.
I'm a real boy now.
Yeah, I was going to say we have you in real life here.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So, our topic tonight is looking at theatre training and what we call probably neurodivergence, or indeed as the humans are called, the neurodivergent student. In addition to all of his activism and busy life, Jorik is a mentor to autistic students across UK universities, and he's writing books as well.
Plural, yes.
Tell us which one.
I have a massive deadline at the end of August, and so I will be tearing my hair out in the conservatory, trying to get both of those done. And one of them is my first book for Jessica Kingsley Publishers. It's called Feeling Fast and Slow, and it's about empathy and alexithymia and emotional porousness and how autism plays into that.
Great.
And the other is called Teaming, which is a novel set in the 1930s with 3 autistic queer characters at its heart. And it's finally going to get finished because I've been writing it since 2016.
Well, I'm sure all of these characters and situations will be coming to life. One of the things for those of us in the drama training field is all the schools now are moving towards are becoming more inclusive.
Yeah.
But one of the things that puzzles us is when you hear autism, very often it is described as the autistic spectrum.
Yeah.
And for you as a person with autism, and also as an advocate for people with autism, how would you define it?
Wow. Well, I think a good example is I just spilled water on my shirt. Look, it's just things like if I wasn't autistic, I wouldn't have been thinking you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to move this about. But in fact, I'm so focused on the way I'm coming across right now that my hand was getting a bit shaky. And yeah, dyspraxia is real. So what's being autistic? What is the spectrum? So the autistic spectrum is actually not a little autistic to super autistic. Mm-hmm. It is a description of a group of people. And those people share a set of developmental differences from the norm. Yeah. So no brain works the same way. Everyone's brain works a different way. I'm not going to talk a lot about brain science because I don't really care. What I care more about is a more sociological perspective of what it is. But meaningfully, there is a biological difference between autistic people, neurodivergent people, and what we call neurotypical people. So people who do not have that brain difference. And I think one example that I think is relevant is the neurological pruning effects. In most people, between the ages of 6 and 18 months, up until that point, the brain is super, super active. Loads of little wormy bits of electricity are visible when you put someone in an MRI scanner and give them specific prompts, and the brain will react in a certain way. Now, in the vast majority of people, between 6 and 18 months, the brain just goes, die! And loads of these little intricate connections die off. And we don't understand the brain fully because it's the most complex object in the universe, as far as we know. Some people more than others. Mine is pretty damn dumb at the moment, but, it's probably because it's also a hot day and I just spilled water over myself. But on the whole, we can see that there are clearer bands of light moving from place to place in people who are neurotypical. With autistic people, that all-over activation is still present. We are more, like, we feel things more intensely much of the time. We are engaging with the world that is overwhelming. If you are neurotypical, you are far more able to decide either willfully or not that certain things just don't matter and they just fall by the wayside. With us, we don't really have that choice. So this is why a lot of conversation about like people who are autistic is about the sensory world. It's about how we can stop us being completely overloaded with bad lighting or noise or being too close to people physically, and going on the tube in London is a thing and is often not a very good idea. And also what I experienced when I last came to the Society of Theatre Research, I'm going to talk about that. I had to have a conversation, I chose to have a conversation with a cabbie, because that's kind of what you do when you're in a London cab. You have a conversation with people. He did absolutely nothing wrong. He was absolutely lovely, but I was focusing so much on the conversation that I lost my keys. And I was so focused on that, the car had left, and I pat myself, just like, oh fuck, oh no. And so I called you, and I was crying, and I was really upset because my keys were gone, and I was trying to call the number that the bloke had given to us on the little card, and
then you got the answer phone that doesn't connect to anything.
Exactly, because the company that he gave, like the company that's the phone number was for, hadn't been in operation in the UK since 2020. So it was a thing. And I came to the event actually really, really flappy, having had a meltdown. Back to the point about brains. For me, being autistic is fundamentally what I am, because when it's something to do with that's so basically about how the brain is structured, it is really who I am. It's how I experience the world. It's what explains my sensitivities and my capacity for, like, languages. For instance, I'm doing this in my second language, not to brag, but
yes, you're Dutch, and you're.
I try not to do the Dutch voice because it's not very. It doesn't infer a lot of confidence. That's all I'm going to say. Not for me, at least. But yeah, it's. If you want to think about a spectrum, it's not that all of us are on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
If we all were on the spectrum somewhere, life for us would be way easier. I mean, if everyone was slightly somewhere on the spectrum, life wouldn't be as painful and awkward and difficult for the people who are autistic.
Right.
So there is a meaningful distinction.
Yeah. I mean, you've talked a lot about sort of brain science, and I think that's what used to be called the medical model.
It was, yeah.
But in your view, you were saying it's moved more towards a social model of disability.
I mean, I am it's mostly because, like, people who are my friends and I hope just kind of kick against that.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of no longer seeing us as a set of pathological weirdness, just seeing us as human beings who are part of a specific minority that faces specific forms of oppression that intersect with other forms of our identity.
Yeah.
It's way more that. Like, I'm just as autistic as I am queer. Like, these things are the same thing for me. They are fundamentally how I engage with the world around me, and more importantly, how the world around me engages with me, whether I wish to or not.
Right, so it's kind of the intersectionality of identity.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to something quite specific, and that's a lot of our folks out here are engaged in either theatre practice or teaching theatre, as well as watching theatre. And you yourself went to drama school in the Netherlands in 2006.
God, that ages me.
Well,
how many people will have been born after that moment who are watching?
Well, come on. But I mean, I've just named the date.
Yes, of course. I'm
your
over
experience, let us hope.
Yeah, I was 18 years old.
Is not what.
Yeah, so I went to drama school in Holland in 2006. It kind of came as a surprise to everyone, including myself. But when I got in, I was just a bit like, okay, this is my one shot at being a person. Like, It was a really weird reason to go to drama school.
That's interesting. You got one shot at being a person.
Yeah, because I was like, I got a lot of crap from people in the street, for instance, who were pointing and laughing at me, or like kindly people who asked me if I just escaped my care home recently, because it was Dutch people in the 2000s.
Yeah.
It's very much like if you do not pass, if you not present in a certain way, that is normal or normative. You are told that in no uncertain terms. Like when I was 5 years old, I was cycling to school because it was Holland in the 90s, and this is what you did. And I remember like a grown man pointing at me saying, "Hey, homo!"
What? And you were 5 years old?
Yeah, but like I didn't know what that meant. He just thought I was cycling in a very gay way.
Okay.
I mean, I was cycling in a very gay way.
Yeah.
Like, it's very difficult to not cycle in a gay way when your hands are already like that. But I was. He just thought it was necessary for me to be told that, because I was breaking some fundamental idea of gender while sitting on a bicycle. So it's this sense of social control that is different in different places, and it's expressed differently in different places. So I always wanted to be funny when I was a kid. Like, for me, being funny was a way of making people not want to harm me. It's very much a self-protection mechanism. And when I left school, I did this audition on a whim, and I got in. And it was a really weird environment. I'm not going to say the names of anyone, but those who know. I was so before the year started, we were invited to do an event with these two stand-up comedians, which was cool because I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, in front of other people, and we had to create some material and then do it. And I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done it before. I'd only been on stage by myself once or twice before I got into drama school. It was a complete fluke. And so I tried to write something and put it on stage, and it went absolutely horrendously wrong. Like, I died on my hole, as stand-up comedians say. And those two guys, who were professionals and who had regular television appearances, absolutely ripped the shit out of me. Absolutely destroyed me. In front of people, for a laugh. And it was like, oh shit. And the other people around me were just looking at me with this mixture of pity and lack of understanding. I was like, what are you doing here?
And this was in your drama school that this event took place?
No, it wasn't. It was in public. It was in a public space.
It's a public, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a theatre. I think it was in Verkoudensvliet. And it wasn't a theatre outside of that drama school, but it was just like an invitation to these two acts to come and work with students. And I did very badly. So when the introduction week came, I felt I had to bring it. As a game, they decided, gosh, wouldn't it be funny if we just pretended to be a cult for the first years? And, well, interesting is a word.
I mean, I use that kind of reservedly.
Yeah.
At least the teachers.
Teachers and the students that were already there.
Right, so the other years, it was what, 3 years?
It was 3 years, 4 years actually, and a preparatory year. I was in the preparatory year.
Right.
And the new blood, they would have this practical joke played upon them. And it was like, okay, we're a cult. And I scared them by going, well, if this is what they want, I'll do it. And I lost it there and then. I lost any semblance of potential success right there. Because I had decided that I was desperate enough to actually buy into this idea.
So how did this cult thing manifest itself?
It was all about very deep conversations about trauma and very deep conversations about pain and breathing towards one's chakras and things like that. It's like, it didn't help that I went to Steiner School as a child, and so I was relatively aware of some very woo-woo language around these things. When it all came out, there was a big practical joke. There was a lot of laughter, mostly at me. because it must have seemed hilarious to them. Like someone being so thick just to actually believe that. I got pneumonia not too long after that, so I didn't actually make it to the first week of teaching. But the second week I was back and people were like, "What? Yeah, I thought you had dropped out." I was like, "No, I haven't dropped out." So the first lesson of atelier, which is kind of where you create your own materials, put yourself in front of the stage, in front of people, you want to be criticised. I was going to come on stage, I prepared something, and I went on, and the teacher, who was the head of that school at the time, she still is, she was like, "No, go back." "Sorry, what?" "No, go back. So I just went back off stage, and I heard, "Yeah." So come back off stage, once time. "No. So, what's going wrong?" "You haven't got the right energy. Just go back. Just get the right energy." Okay, so I walk back. And that happens a couple times, I think maybe up to 10, 15 times. And then I started crying, and she was like, "Okay, we'll work with that." And that's how 2 years started. I was there for 2 full years. And what that is a very beautiful explanation of, like sort of illustration of, is the double empathy problem. And that's created by an autistic researcher called Daniel Milton, who is amazing. And he wrote a book called A Mismatch of Salience. And for Milton, autistic people and neurotypical people both have systems of empathy. We empathise very, very strongly with those around us. With people who are not autistic, they have relatively okay empathy with one another. And empathy, really, if you ask me, it's just, what do I think? See another person, copy-paste. It's not that big a deal. It's not rocket science. It's just going, what could this person think? Because it's not infallible. Like, you make things, you mess up, you'll make mistakes all the time. Here, there's a piece of research, I think it's from Norway, from 2017 or something, and it's using thin slice judgments. Okay. And if you like, I can send you the printout of that.
That'd be.
Yeah, because you can put it maybe in the doobly-doo below. And really what it is a piece of research, but they essentially put people in this Sega Rally machine-like looking thing, and they blocked out the windows, and there was no light, there was no audio, there was no visual information that they could get from outside of that. Yeah. And thin slice judgment is a thing that they do in marketing.
Okay.
If an advert doesn't grab you within the first second, it has to go into the bin, because people are already negatively
negative bias against having to spend money. Yeah,
we're into advertising. Like, oh, for God's sake! So it has to be really grabbing if you want it to work. These researchers were like, okay, we're going to do this with people. So, without saying anything about autism, anything about neurodiversity, anything about anything, they just put people into that box. I think they had 80 neurotypicals, people who are autistic, and a control group of 60 autistic people, I think. But I'm just calculating, I'm terrible with numbers, so when I say these numbers, take them with a grain of salt. But this was kind of the tenor of it. Now, they showed / played the voices of people with and without visuals, and moving and still. So you could have just a voice without any visual information, just a picture of someone, or a moving picture of someone with their voice, and the person had to say, after a second and a half, they had to rate their approachability out of 10.
Right.
So I'll start with the control group. The control group was like, of autistic people, had very high empathy, very high approachability with other autistic people. 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 9, 8, 7, 8, 9. With neurotypicals, it was a bit lower. It was 7, 8, 6, 7, 5, 7, 6, 8, 8, 5. Now, neurotypicals, the test group, towards neurotypicals, same group, it's relatively high. 7, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 7, 9, 8, 6. Relatively high. From neurotypicals to autistic people to 1, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 0, 3.
So that's the kind of the inability to develop an empathetic relationship between neurotypicals and neurodivergent or autistic.
So it's like
I don't blame people who aren't autistic, essentially, for thinking that we're a bit weird. It's almost biological. Like, they look at us and they don't see a person. On a very primal level, they don't get the right vibe. We, in order to remain safe, have to develop that vibe.
Right.
What she wanted from me on that day in 2006 was my authenticity.
Okay.
And she couldn't get it.
Right.
Because she was trying to find something that wasn't there.
I think earlier, when you were at Lambda, you mentioned the fact that acting classes present a real problem for, people with autism because...
I prefer saying autistic people, by the way.
Sorry?
I prefer saying autistic people, by the way.
Autistic people? Okay.
People with autism, the narrative around people with autism, at least in the English-speaking world, is associated with conversion therapy and ABA and PGS.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay. At Lambda, you mentioned that autistic people in a drama school are already having to act neurotypical, so when they're being asked to do an acting exercise and be something else, there's already another layer.
It is another layer. And it's like, what was happening with her was she was trying to go, where is the bottom layer? And then we can build from that. But she couldn't get there. Because, intuitively, she couldn't access me. She was trying. She was giving it a good old go. But she wasn't getting through to me as much as I was trying to get through to her. She thought I had, a fourth wall in front of me. I didn't. I'm just autistic. I wasn't out as being autistic at the time. I hated being autistic. I was diagnosed when I was 8 years old, and I didn't start accepting it until I was 26. So this was being a performer was kind of a way of running away from that. I wanted to not be whatever it was that I happened to be. I wanted to get hassled in the street for things that I did that were good, actually, rather than just get hassled in the street for being what I was. Also want to start coming out as queer when I was in drama school, and I didn't, because it was the most homophobic environment I've ever been in, which is... there were no queer people there. None. Everyone was straight and cis. It's ridiculous.
I think things have moved on, I hope, since 2006. Or at least
I think they have,
at least in this country they appear to.
Yeah, we do our best. But it's more that, when we are acting, we are already expected to be a person. And that was the thing I had to put work into every single day. I had to put in so much work to pretend to be a human being so I would be safe from others.
Right.
And that human being sounds weird, because of course I'm a human being. It's just that being a human being is something that is conferred upon you and can therefore also be taken away. And this emphatic link, this automatic intuitive thing, that. She did not have that with me. Neither did any of the other students.
Right. So it creates, it's almost like a hurdle that is...
Yeah. And we're expected to jump that hurdle. We're the ones expected to do that. So, I'm in a group I'll talk to you about that later, called Revolution, and we are autistic and neurodivergent theatre practitioners trying to change the system. And frankly, the way that theatre training is happening at the moment, it is completely undoable for us. The amount of expectations placed upon us is unworkable.
I think I'd like to open that up a bit, for you to talk about the challenges that I would say a conservatoire drama training would present for autistic people, because university drama training tends to be a combination of quite academic work as well as practical.
I've also done that. I thought, when I was doing my year abroad at Sussex Uni, I took some drama courses in order to wash my sins away from me. It was, oh no, I ruined it. When I was kicked out of drama school after 2 years, they were just we just don't know what to do. So a few 2 years of profound depression. And then I was taken under the wing of this theatre group called the Bruine Master, who are absolutely sound. There is still a video on YouTube somewhere of me with bad hair because I've been neglecting myself and drinking too much, dressed as a choir boy. It was hilarious. It was really fun, but I also recognised that the people I was working with were treating me mostly as a body and what that body could do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 6'4". I'm quite tall. I was also bigger at the time, as in I weighed more.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't obese at that time. I was going to be like a lot bigger later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
A bit blogs about that stuff. But I have a kind of attitude simply by putting my body in a place.
Yeah.
Like, I was not allowed to get away with much of anything when I was younger. In places like grammar school, for instance. Because simply me saying a thing and having the body that I do conferred a sense of superiority onto it, even if I wasn't looking for that.
Right.
And so I would often just be shut down.
Yeah.
And the thing about empathy is that it is something that neurotypicals seek when they want to train actors.
Yes.
They want to connect to the real person and break them down to build them up again.
Yeah.
She couldn't even get started with that. And I get her frustration as well. Like, okay, it's crying, but let's do something with the crying thing. Because at that moment she saw that she'd made a mistake.
Yeah.
She should have never allowed me entry to that place.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, later on, like there were occasions when visiting acts and like even someone was a visiting teacher, but that was later on after I'd already left drama school, was sexually inappropriate with it. One just in public. And I was like, okay, if this is what I need to do to get on in the world, I'll do it. And also like with that guy who like touched me up and like kissed me with tongues. I was at the time he was 68, I think. I was 21, just turned 21. And I remember looking at him like going, sorry, you're attracted to this? Which doesn't speak very well for my mental health and my sense of self-esteem at the time.
So drama school also seemed to not only have the problem of they didn't get you, and to some extent you kept trying to get them. The sort of
I was doing so much emotional labour. I was trying to like present in a way that made them feel like, I remember being absolutely obsessed with the way I looked. And I'd never been that before. Like, I would deliberately look for clothes and thought about hair and thought about the glasses I was wearing. I wore contacts for a couple of months because I'm like, anything they can use to reject me, they will. So I'm going to have contacts. In the end, I got an infection in my eyelid that didn't go away for 2 years. Yeah, I looked awful. And it's this, I did not know what they wanted of me. But I did get very clearly that they didn't want me.
Right.
And other autistic people I've spoken to who've gone through drama school have had similar experience, although not as weird as I have sometimes. But they're often like pushed down and diminished. They're only allowed to play character acting roles. And you see the autistic actors who are having like big careers. Even that is limited. Like Anthony Hopkins didn't get big until his 50s because he went in front of people, talked about having father beats with the nicely Anthony. That's a very autistically coded role because it creates this sense of, we'll talk about autistic coding in a bit, please remind me because my brain but that, yeah. And then Daryl Hannah, who was drop dead gorgeous, but what is the film that she got popular with? Splash, Tom Hanks. It's a silly comedy, but she was a mermaid. She is good enough to be like to have been Meryl Streep. I think they're kind of the same age. I think Daryl Hannah's a bit younger. But she does have those chops. It's just that everyone else doesn't let her get away with it. So she has to play weird roles.
So is that where you think the go-to casting place is for an autistic actor?
If anything, yeah. You tend to get stuck into those places. A friend of mine was an actor in quite an important West End show. And in order to play the character, she just went into this space, like mentally and also with her voice. She just produced herself in songs. And just became very like this. And that's the kind of thing we have to do. We have to become ridiculous. We can't be people. We have to be things.
Or types, it sounds like.
Types, yeah. And also, theatre is full of autistically coded characters. And before any of the diagnostic criteria was set.
So tell me more about what you call autistic coding.
Yeah, so I take that from queer coding, and queer coding has a long history. The Hays Code in the 1930s and 40s, where the American government said no, you can't show homosexuals. So the film studios were like, damn right, we're going to show homosexuals, but they're all going to be evil.
Yeah,
and that has very, very clear ramifications even after that was ended in the 60s. Mm-hmm. For instance, Disney villains in the 1990s, flagrantly homosexual.
Yeah.
To a T. Like, one is Scar, if not a very bitchy gay like one of the most reprehensible straight men in history, that being Jeremy Irons. And Jafar is very much like that. And Ursula the Sea Witch is divine, the drag queen. Like, these systems are created to fit a certain idea of what how homosexual is painted without saying the words they're queer.
Yeah.
Like, with autistic coding, it works in a similar way, but it's a little bit more pernicious and it's a little bit less visible. Many roles that we associate with kind of weird characters kind of fit the way our bodies operate when we're at a state of stress. So when you play low status, what you do, shoulders roll side to back. You go like this, and you put yourself in a situation where you're essentially doing. I'm really now giving myself a bit of a meltdown because what I'm doing is I'm telling my body that I'm in danger. Now that is normal. That happens to neurotypicals as well.
Yeah.
But it happens to us more frequently because the world is more for us.
Yeah.
Like, to a degree that, like, I'd like to talk about Hilary Mantel, now slightly departed, who in her 2017 Read Lectures talked about the sensory world of Thomas Cromwell. Thomas Cromwell lived in London in the 16th century, and he was the kind of second in command of Henry VIII. And she said, I have to remind myself constantly that he lived in a world where the loudest noise he was going to hear would be a thunderstorm or a heavy cart down some cobblestones. That was the loudest thing Thomas Cromwell would hear. And we have that kind of noise overload on a second-by-second basis in London.
Yeah.
It is just completely normalised. However, there's only, no one likes the noise in London, but for us it's actually painful. Like, neurotypicals don't like London because of the way it sounds.
Yeah.
But we actually feel pain because of overload. Autistic coding, then, is based on how we are positioned at point of distress. These characters don't even have to be diagnosed autistic in universe. When I was at drama school, I was allowed to be a part of a commedia dell'arte set of workshops, which is so much fun. I love commedia because, you can do the nose thing, and then the capitano, which is essentially just a set of eyebrows and a chest, and Dottore I loved, and then you have the Zanni, you have the Harlequin, which is just essentially cheekbones. And cheekbones and eyebrows very, very high up. And you're a little bit like this. And your voice, I realise that I'm becoming very West Country because apparently that's my negative association with low status. It's very, very bad that I do that and I deserve to be cancelled. And it's this low status character who's been like, and he's a bit like, and I'm like, I've been that way. I look like that on a bad day.
How very interesting. So Arlecchino is actually
could be seen as that.
Could be seen.
However, also the other ones, also the Dottore, who was just very much interested in the books that he was reading. There's a sexual unpleasantness about the Dottore as well, usually in commedia dell'arte.
Yeah.
The Capitano just was a bloke who's very like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Who's kind of like, no. That can also be seen in the form of autistic coding. Now, in order to challenge the people who think about, everything is autistic right now, these are comedy characters.
Yeah.
These are there to make you laugh. They're not there to hold the narrative in place and have the emotional impact.
Yeah.
That's the emanati.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that we're supposed to have a connection with.
Yeah.
They are the main characters. They don't wear a mask because they're people.
Right.
But with these stock characters, they all have a physicality that is described in very limited ways.
Yes.
That is still how status is taught in drama school.
Okay.
If a character is playing in a certain status, they're playing at high status, which is the the voice goes down, pace slows down, and I can make you wait. Because I know, you know, something will be coming. You see what's happening to my back?
Yeah.
What's happening to my breathing? That's how you do high status. Low status is more like that. Because everything is just, oh God, like you've just become very vulnerable. And I become less likely that you're going to believe in me, blah, 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 blah. And which is also a bit of a thing, by the way. And low status is plagued by stimming. Stimmings, self-stimulatory behaviours, like flapping. I flap quite a bit. I jump up and down sometimes when I'm excited. I sing compulsively. I used to do this really. This says a lot about how I used to mask. I used to stim with my tongue against the backs of my teeth, like I was playing. Like it's not hungry. It's hungry hippos where you push in the tooth.
Yeah.
Like I was playing hungry hippos against myself.
Right.
I must have looked so weird. I must have looked like I was trying to find an Invisalign that was but those are ways that allowed me to calm my brain down while I was dealing with the muchness of everything.
Right.
In that Commedia workshop, we had to play characters in this. I had to play the Harlequin. And one of my teachers, who was also, she was a fourth year student, she had to play the Capitano. And so we were in this kind of quiz scenario, and I thought, okay, what would the Harlequin do when we got to the question right? It's like, oh, can't she have that as well? And I thought that was perfectly within the parameters of the character. The visiting director said, no, stop, get out. I had broken a fundamental rule. However, other people were getting away with way worse. Like, they would really break the thing. I just thought the Harlequin is quite sweet. So let's build something about the Harlequin being quite sweet.
As opposed to just slightly dippy.
Yeah, it's supposed to be slightly dippy. But it's not something that other people... I think if someone else had done it, they would have gotten away with it. They'd be able to build a scene out of that. But I was not allowed that, because I'm different. And the guy had no idea why I was different. It just didn't feel right with it. There's also this guy, Heldraderberg, has this idea about like 4 different it's really woo-woo elements. So you can have stone and fire and water and air. Yeah. It's really silly, but essentially status is repackaged.
Right.
And it's like I was able to get away with some things and not able to get away with others, and it had very little to do with my actual capacity to do the thing.
So it also feels like as an autistic student, there's a preconception about.
Not even that. Like it's like I was hiding desperately that I was autistic because one of the other students was working part time as a SEND support worker. She clocked me immediately. Like she kind of took me under her wing, and I was like, I can't have you take me under your wing. I'm terrified. I just need to be normal. She's like, okay, can't force you. I was trying to hide from everyone. It was fucking horrible.
I think what I'd like to move on to is probably kind of going into the future, because we've looked at the challenges in training, and it's kind of like how can we, theatre practitioners and tutors, work more inclusively, with autistic students.
It's really hard because we're dealing with things that aren't even unconscious biases. Like it goes so deep, this sense of us as being different and not quite right, a sense of danger, a sense of unpredictability. When we're not trying to be dangerous or unpredictable, we just are. And it has very little to do with the way that we present. Sometimes we can mask it away, but the fundamental problem is not within us. It's within the neurotypical systems that run drama school. Because really what it is about creating fake behaviour that audiences let you get away with. However well we perform, there is very little that an audience would allow us to get away with. and not think that it's weird or quirky or silly or odd or dangerous or strange. And so it's important to be mindful of that. It's important to be mindful of your own limitations as an audience member, and yet you, as a neurotypical practitioner, would dismiss the ideas of neurodivergent students. If you're a and likewise that could be in the opposite as well. If you're in the weird position of being a neurodivergent practitioner, working with neurotypical students, you need to be mindful to not dismiss them, even though you don't feel it. However, having been socialized as a neurodivergent person, you have been taught that however well or badly neurotypicals are acting, they're doing it better than you, because they do have that immediate connection with the neurotypical audience. It doesn't occur in a vacuum. So the Revolution Project is named because of a joke I made at the thing in January. What can I say why we're not actually putting that on YouTube?
Sorry,
The talk that I did for you in January for the Theatre Society of Theatre Research.
Yeah, well, we probably should say that.
We probably should say that.
This is a re-recording because, partly it was also, we now have a much better camera, and the whole engagement, I think, of you to camera got completely messed up, largely because you were trying to zoom and talk to the audience at the same time.
So it was really weird, but mostly because my energy was all over the place. I'd just come off a meltdown because I'd lost my keys and didn't know how I was going to get home in the evening. My bicycle was still stuck to the
railings at Fast was.
Yeah, it was. It was horrible. I was on the phone to you as well. I was crying. I was really, really upset. And so I had quite my breathing was high, I was flappy, I was shaking. I was a mess, and I looked it. I couldn't lie that innate kind of anxiousness away. It's like when I used to do comedy for 8 years. After leaving drama school, I went to the Edinburgh Festival for the first time in 2009, and I did stand-up for the first time and kind of felt like, okay, maybe I can be here. Maybe this can be my place. Ended up not being my place, but that's a different story altogether. I would die on my hole if I just had a meltdown, because audiences would be able to grasp that, oh, there's something wrong with that one. Let's not engage.
Interesting.
Let's not laugh. Let's just wait until it's over. It's not that they would actually hate me, because I did get heckled, and I have a story about being heckled out of Wincanton and these two guys walking away, and then the rest of the acts having to stop them killing me. Because I made, because I'd just come out as queer, and I'd received, for a laugh, I got this, as a joke, I was given this L-shaped butt plug. And I thought it looked like a UKIP logo.
Okay.
Because this was 2014. And so they were not interested, and they wanted to beat me to a pulp. Saying that about UKIP. And I'll say, wait, if that's the worst thing they think I could have said about UKIP, they had no idea. But yeah, UKIP is bad.
Yeah.
What was I talking about?
So it was going back, I think, to very early on in this talk, you said most of the training in a conservatoire drama school is not really accessible to autistic.
I mean, it could be.
Okay, that's
it
the
could be
thinking about what would make it accessible.
Not this. This is what Revolution is all about. So we're thinking about having a system of educating neurodivergent students in a way that is safe. And it does require a revolution in thinking about how we do theatre. So autistic people are more likely to burn out. Autistic people are more likely to have issues with the sensory world. And so what we would have in the first 2 years, for instance, is we would have a greater emphasis on co-production. We would have classes led by at least 2 neurodivergent theatre practitioners at the same time for safeguarding purposes. The room in which we work would be constantly discussed, and if people are having difficulties with sensory world, say if you're using like in Lambda, they have these big fluorescent tubes that you hear.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to hear them, but I do hear them when I'm tired, and I was quite tired on that day. that is itself an obstacle, and neurotypicals haven't got a clue that that was a thing.
No, well, some of us do hear them, but it's, as you said, the sensory world is more profound.
It is,
What seems like a little tweaky hum to a neurotypical probably sounds a lot louder.
Definitely, yeah. And then also, that would be like a consultative discussion, and we would work through that. What we would want to do is build actors, and build performers, and build writers, and build directors who use their neurodivergence as their strength, with the knowledge that neurotypicals are less likely to take us seriously. So you can train an autistic person to do Meissner or Stanislavski. Will they be allowed to get away with it? That's an entirely different story. Because a lot of Meissner and Stanislavski is about your authentic feelings. But you need something else with that. You can pretend you can pretend to have certain feelings, you can perform them, you can show them, you can feel them very deeply. But if the other person isn't listening, it doesn't work at all. And so the focus that we will have will be very much on the physical. So we are looking at Severin Meyerhold, who is a Soviet practitioner of the 30s, Rudolf Laban, and what's the other guy? Michael Chekhov, exactly. And all of those guys have a very deep understanding of the body and what the body communicates, and are less interested in the thing inside that's doing the communicating. It would be a way to kind of show, like, it is like a showing thing we do with our bodies. Like, we would use our bodies really as, we would be able to show the skill that we have in choreographing our own movements and our own voice in a way that is compelling. Because authenticity, as valuable as it will be for neurodivergent audiences, is not going to be taken seriously by neurotypical audiences. It just can't. Hopefully in 100 years things will be different, and neurotypicals can actually say, oh yeah, I can actually work towards that. But until that point, no. Like, it's not going to happen.
So it's interesting, because then it becomes more emphasis on, I guess, a physical training. You know, Meyerhold with the biomechanics, Michael Chekhov, physical actions, Laban, of course, with the Laban effort actions, and less about, I guess, what we consider the more traditional realist acting from Stanislavski and his followers, where it's all about...
Which we could potentially do amazingly. But whether we succeed at it has nothing to do with us. Absolutely nothing to do with us. And that's not a problem that we can solve. And we are mindful of that. So part of what a neurodivergent actor then would be learning under Revolution is to do their own homework. Like, just come to rehearsal when they've been cast in a role and say, okay, I can do this part of this, and this way. Which one do you want? Because in a creative process led by a neurotypical on neurotypical grounds, we will always be squished. We will always be a body, or be a body that's in the way. So why not allow us to get really, really skilled at that performance? Like, I like using Jacques Brel as an example. Jacques Brel is very physical in the way that he performs, and he is making intuitive decisions in the moment, but you're too busy being dazzled by him to actually look at where's the authenticity there. Like, if you're good enough to hold them in the palm of your hand, do things that you do, you can be authentic as you like, and they won't even be noticing it. You can be authentic, you can be inauthentic, who cares? They don't. They're too busy being dazzled. And that's a different story altogether. Like, we are no longer placing our capacity to do our jobs in a system that isn't able to even notice that it's excluding us. Like I said, I don't blame people for it. It's just that a certain kind of person in society has already been validated as being a kind of person. So for the first 2 years, there would be no neurotypicals in the room. Because working with other autistic people, I know that it is unsafe. It is unsafe because when a neurotypical comes into the room, even if it's like the 5-year-old child of one of the teachers and is neurotypical, the entire system of how to socialise and how to behave and how to act changes to the benefit of that one neurotypical. This is the same as queer people who are acting more straight in front of straight people, people of colour who have to change the way that they're passing, change the sound of their voices, code switch often, so that they wouldn't be seen as lesser than. And with neurodivergent actors, that is also the case. And that intensifies when you also have other, essentially you don't look like me. And it's important to be mindful of that. The thing is then also that we have to change the theatre industry from the ground up, because the system that we have now is not working. Either as a student or as a practitioner, the demands placed on your time, your capacity to socialise, and your capacity to be on is brutal and draining and profoundly damaging to people's health. So part of what we would be doing is saying, okay, you burnt out is way worse than you not being here. So if you tap out. We're not going to hold that against you. It's not immoral. You need to learn to take care of yourself, because you can't be an artist unless you are, in a way, taking care of your own brain. You can't create when you're unhappy. You can't create when you're poor. You can't create when you're sick. You can't create when you're tired. So we would be like, if people are saying, no, I didn't want this, I felt I needed to, no, go home. That is the wrong thing. Not taking care of your own needs is the problem. And then you come up against drama school, which is the exact opposite of that. It's all about putting in the hours, showing up, being on time, not missing your cue, blah, 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 blah. We can't do any of those things when we're already exhausted from simply being in a room with neurotypicals doing the washing up. Like, simply being in a space with people for whom we have to pretend to be more like them in order to be safe. And then we have to do all of those things? It's a surprise I didn't burn out earlier. It's a surprise none of us did. And lots of careers just end up meeting a very, abbreviated end. Lives end because of that stuff like that. Like, the amount of expectations socially that are put on you once you enter the space of drama school and then the theatre world are immense. And the expectations are always to benefit neurotypicals in the room, and they're not aware of it. Like I said, I'm not blaming anyone personally. I don't particularly care. It's just the system that is already existing. And, if people look at me and go, you're a bit weird, I don't even blame them for it, because I probably am. And there is nothing I can do about that. We need to normalise taking time off. We need to normalise having breaks, and we need to normalise swings for every single role. People are not being paid enough to be an actor in this country. So we have to up those wages per person and normalise that 3 or 4 people at the same time are rehearsing for a particular role. The idea of working with stars who show up every single day again and again and again is really silly. And it is this weird kind of masochistic thing that actors have. Well, we have to show up and it's doctor theatre, as if that's something to be proud of. Like harming yourself for your art. Such nonsense. It's such ableist, debilitating nonsense that we're expected to harm ourselves. For what? 2.5 hours of people's time that they'll probably forget about the next week. If we want to make art that matters, our first responsibility is our own health. Currently, with the way the theatre system is working, that's not happening anytime soon. And then there's the point of, why do I want to have 2 practitioners at the same time teaching? Safeguard. Drama schools are unsafe places, especially if you're a woman, if you're a person of colour, if you're queer, if you're disabled. These are not safe spaces. And as much as right-wing politics likes to crow about entertainment being all liberal and stuff, it really isn't. It's a profoundly conservative social environment that runs on toxic masculinity and power and sexism, internalised or otherwise, and homophobia. The idea of being what you are is seen as kind of weird. And
although it's quite contradictory, because that's what drama schools prize. They talk about authenticity and the individual, the unique individual. Yeah.
But it's the individual that they want to build.
Well, yes, to some extent there is I think that many views of particular drama schools, both here and elsewhere have, we are producing the actor who bears the name of our training. That when you see a graduate from this school, you will know.
But even when it isn't, even with those saying, no, what we care about is the individual person, the individual performer, people coming in here, and we build them to be better versions of themselves. It's not going to fly. Never has, never will. A friend of mine, talked about his experience at drama school, and that he was having to do improvisations, you fuck up first 2 times, but the third time it has to be right. That's a lose-lose. It doesn't matter. Even if we have the best possible idea, it will not land with neurotypicals. Because the way that we think and the way they receive that are entirely different things. Because they don't need to. It's just that, they seem to find it very difficult to take us seriously as performers in anything that's not, very comedy, that's not small. I saw I've written a set of blogs about autistic coding on stage. One of them is the one that actually, it still gets Googled, and it's because it's about Dear Evan Hansen, which is an absolutely vile show with amazing songs. And it's very 2010s. It's this idea you have to be authentically, you have to be who you are. But Evan is coded autistically, and the entire narrative is about him being put in his place and trying to be something that he isn't. What he is, that's not, the show isn't interested in that. Just not a person. He needs to remain in his place. And the show is actually uninterested in what actually happens to him, because it just seems to point and sneer at someone trying to have a life.
Well, let's hope that we will move forward. I'd be very interested, in the future to hear more about Revolution. You've got some fantastic ideas about the whole idea of a class of neurodivergent people with tutors who understand them.
Yeah.
That seems a really big step forward.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Time and.
I hope it wasn't too depressing.
No, it will. I think some of the things that you said are very thought-provoking.
Yeah.
It gives us.
But it's if we want to have a theatre that represents society, we have to be revolutionaries. We have to look at, what are the systems that are already functioning, and how can we broaden this out?
Yeah.
Sometimes being aware of one's own limitations is the best thing you can do. And so we would be able to train actors to be incredibly, proactive, supportive, and creative artists, but not in the room. We would do that beforehand, and we'd play the house down. But because we know that the systems currently in place are not safe for us. So this is why we're trying to change it, and hopefully I was offered recently a research fellowship at a UK university. It's funded by the Wellcome Trust, and I hope that I can bring some of this work actually into the rehearsal room and see how we can work on this to validate our lived experience and to make theatre that is authentically, how we in our diverse way experience the world, because actually being autistic is pretty damn amazing. And it's just living with an autistic person is the greatest thing in the world, because I don't have to do emotional labour. I can just exist. A joke that I often make is that I have stopped having sex with neurotypicals because, oh God, there's so much work. Oh my God, they're exhausting. They don't say anything. They just assume that you already know exactly what they want. And I just feel like I'm doing a triple shift at Mackey's. You're just constantly okay, and I'm not enjoying myself, and he's not enjoying himself, but I'm just completely focused on performing a service for this guy. It is exhausting. And when you no longer feel like you have to do that, either in your work life or your sex life, God, life is so much better that way.
Right, well, thank you very much, Jorik.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.